We did. Now, in the posterior horn, everything that is sensory. Sensory is blue, every time blue. No problem, everybody has blue color, yes? But they have the special names. The first of them is located near the border of this posterior horn, and it's called the gelatinous substance. Okay. The next one is called the thoracic nucleus. It's more developed in the thoracic segments. One more is called the proper nucleus. Proper nucleus. And we have one more that is called intermedia media. It's nearly at the level of the lateral horn. Here is it. It's called intermedia. Medial nucleus. Of course, they are numerous, but we ask you please know the names of at least this one. The lateral horn is the place for the vegetative autonomic nervous system centers. They are labeled with green, and one, the most important, located in the lateral horn, is called the intermediate lateral column or intermediate lateral nucleus. Intermediate lateral nucleus. Intermediate lateral nucleus. Is it done?
Yes, yes, please.
Now we'll go to our white substance, white matter. As we said before, it's formed by axons of nervous cells, and they are fused together to form the conductive tracts. Conductive tracts are the tracts of the chain of neurons, and they are descending. In this case, they start from some motor centers of cortex, of subcortical motor centers, directed downwards to muscles, and they are motor. Descending are motor. Ascending, they start from receptors, different receptors. Receptors of pain, touch, temperature. Receptors of the oculomotor apparatus. Receptors of internal organs. And they deliver impulses towards the centers of brain. They are ascending or sensory. In the anterior funiculus, the tracts which are located are motor tracts, we know it. Motor tracts, again, we'll use our red, and motor tracts which are distributed here are called as the cortico-spinal anterior tract. Cortico-spinal anterior tract. Corticospinal. To be emphasized with the name, cortex and spinal cord. Cortex of brain, spinal cord is spinal cord. It means that cortex of brain takes part in the formation of this tract. it means that this tract depends on cortex. Therefore, this tract is voluntary tract. And due to the fact that it's a descending tract, it starts from cortex directed downwards. It means that it's voluntary motor tract. What does it mean? It's our movements, voluntary movements. So we step, we sit, and so on. They are voluntary in the anterior funiculus. In the posterior funiculus are located sensory tracts, and we'll take our blue, again our blue, and these tracts are divided into two fascicles. One of them is called gracile, the second is cuneate. And cuneate fascicles. What does it mean? As we said, sensory tracts are ascending tracts, ascending, directed upwards. They start from receptors of oculomotor apparatus. What does it mean? There are receptors located in the capsules of joints, for example, in the tendons of muscles, and the set of these receptors is called proper receptors. They belong to the oculomotor apparatus. Therefore, these fascicles are responsible for the proprioception. It means that they recognize the position of our upper lower limbs in the space, in the environment, position of the body in the environment, and also they recognize the surfaces, tactile sensation. So when I touch this table, I understand that the surface is smooth. I understand it, yes? So all of them are proper receptions, and they are responsible for the position of the human body in the space, and also for the tactile sensation. The lateral funiculus is the place where the both types of axons are located, motor and as well as the sensory. The sensory are, due to the fact that we have this blue, yes, the sensory are first of all represented with the spinocerebellar tracts. It's better to use probably this side because it's occupied already. So we have tracts, they are called spinocerebellar tracts, anterior and posterior. Anterior and posterior. So, spinocerebellar anterior and posterior tracts. The word cerebellum is known. It means small brain, cerebellum, and in our thoughts are already connections between cerebellum and coordination of movements, balance. Therefore, these two tracts are tracts. The function of these tracts is to provide the balanced coordination of movements. Cerebellum is the part of brain that is not related with survival. Yes, we can live without cerebellum, but we can't coordinate our movements. These tracts. The next tracts are also sensitive tracts, and the first of them is located here. It's called the lateral spinothalamic tract, and one more is located there. You see, it's nearly between two funiculus. They are the spinothalamic anterior and spinothalamic lateral tracts. Spinothalamic tracts. Spinothalamic anterior and lateral tracts. Spinothalamic anterior and lateral tracts. Thalamus is a part of brain as a function of which is the subcortical types of sensitivities. It means that the pain, temperature, touch, which are related with thalamus, these types of impulses are passing through these tracts. For example, when you touch very hot subject, yes, you take away your hand without thoughts about it. Yes, it's reflexes, reflectory. Or if it's very sharp needle, yes, you touch it and you take your hand away because it's very sharp. You don't think about it. You do it involuntarily. These tracts are responsible for pain, temperature, and touch. We'll come back to our motor tracts. As we said, in the lateral funiculus, there are the both sensory and motor. And the examples of the motor will be the lateral corticospinal tract, lateral corticospinal tract, and a little bit below we have the tract it's called rubrospinal tract. Rubrospinal. Corticospinal. We know this corticospinal anterior, but this one is corticospinal lateral. The same function, voluntary motor tracts, but the different location. One is located in the anterior funiculus, the second is in the lateral funiculus. We understand that all of them are symmetric, yes? So it would be the same tract here, the same tracts there, so we understand. Rubrospinal. Rubrospinal tract. Rubra, it means red. The red nucleus rubra, is the nucleus of the midbrain. It's subcortically located, therefore it's already involuntary motor tract. Involuntary. It does not depend on our cortex. Involuntary. Of course, the number of tracts it's prevailing. It's the smallest amount of them. At least this one should be known by you, should be learned by heart. The next, as we said before, the simplest chain of neurons which are directed to accept nervous impulses and to form the nervous response is called the reflex arch. And when we draw reflex arch on the blackboard, before start to do it, we should notice this structure. What is it? You see, this enlargement is formed at the level of the posterior root. This enlargement is called the spinal ganglion. This ganglion, in the case if it would be dissected, is a place where the bodies of sensory neurons are located. Their dendrite goes towards receptors, but the axons enter the spinal cord. This is the place where the first neuron of reflex arch is formed. Here is it. Well, the nervous impulses are taken by receptors, delivered towards the body of the sensory neurons. Afterwards, through the axons, they are directed to the second neurons. The role of second neuron is the role of the nuclei of the posterior horn, located here, or it could be nuclei of the lateral horn, located here. The impulses from this second neuron directed to the anterior horn, where the motor nuclei are formed. They be the second or the third neurons, and they are forming axons to be directed already as the anterior roots towards the organ located outside the central nervous system. It's theoretically. Now we'll use blackboard to demonstrate the reflex arch. Again, the transverse dissection of spinal cord, please do it. To draw it, because it's included in your practical skills. To be able to draw the simplest reflex arch. Transverse section of spinal cord. So the simplest reflex arch consists of at least two neurons. The first neuron is located in spinal ganglion, exactly this part, this one. Spinal ganglion, here is it. The dendrite goes to receptor. Receptor different, so on the surface of skin, receptor of pain, temperature, touch. In the internal organs, their own receptors. In the motors part, in the oculomotor apparatus, also receptors, so receptor. From the body, the axon is formed. It goes towards the gray matter, and here is it. It will be terminated by the both types neurons, the posterior or the intermediate neurons of the lateral horn. It will be the first neuron termination of it here. If there are only two neurons, these two nuclei will be passed and the nervous impulses directed towards the motor neurons. Here is it, the second motor neuron, and the axon of this neuron goes out nervous system, joins the sensory neuron and directed to the effector, some organ, muscle for example. So there are only two neurons. You see that these were passed. They don't take part in the formation of this reflex arch. If the reflex arch consists of three neurons, the same picture, please do it. So the same, we'll repeat it. The first neuron is absolutely the same, spinal ganglion. The receptor is located here. The second neuron, as we said before, will be formed in the posterior or lateral horn. Second. The third in the anterior horn, and the axon of this neuron directed to the effector, and we'll get three neurons. Reflex arch can consist of 2, 3, and as many neurons as possible. Please do it because it's included in your practical skills. You are shaking head, but you don't do it, please. If you have some questions, don't hesitate to ask.